Welcome everybody to Temple Emunah's Anti-Semitism Initiative program or project. I'm Terry Swartz-Russell, in case you don't know me, and I'm the co-chair with Sandy Goldstein of the Adult Ed Committee. And we decided this year that we would focus on anti-Semitism because it's the Jewish problem that won't go away, and that we would do a deep dive. And we've done all kinds of things, and we have yet to do a play. So we want to thank Igor and Sarah and Sonia and Sophia and everybody involved with your theater company for really taking this by the horn. And we're thrilled tonight because when I said to Marcy and Ed Lidman that we were going to do this, Ed said, "Well, I know Sophia, Igor's mom, so let me give her a call and see if Igor will come and talk to us." So we're thrilled that all of you are here, and we're ready to start. And I want to thank Ed. And rather than me being the moderator and in conversation with Igor, I said, Marcy does this so much better than I and has more experience. And she said yes. So I'm going to shut up now and thank you. And I'm just going to say at the end, I'll tell you about what's coming up afterwards. And Igor will also tell us what's coming up with his theater, with the theater company. So looking forward to the conversation. And I am now mute, and I will unmute Marcy. Okay.
You muted me, but that's okay. So good evening, everybody, and a big thank you to Igor and also to Sarah, who works with Harlequin, the Harlequin group as well. We want to welcome you to an evening of conversation about the play Witness. And I think, Sarah, the best way to kick us off is to show a trailer for those of us, who either haven't seen the play or saw the play a couple of weeks ago. And just want to sort of refresh our memories. So we'll start with the trailer, and then I'll ask Igor to introduce himself.
Greetings, passengers of the MS St. Louis. This is your captain, Gustav Schroeder, speaking.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the St. Louis.
1,000 foreigners will arrive in the St. Louis. Immediate displacement of our workers. Government efforts to alleviate unemployment will be frustrated if the immigration.
Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty.
What is this?
Siren.
Why?
ספירה. אתה צריך לעמוד בשתיקה. צדקת הדומייה. יום הזיכרון ויום השואה.
Kapitän, wohin fahren Sie uns?
What?
You are not going back to Hamburg.
Thank you. Thank you. Just if you could give me a show of hands, how many of us have seen the play? Okay, so it looks like almost everybody who's here has seen the play. It was really quite an experience for me. Igor, you've seen the play. I'm so glad to hear that. So this is Igor Goliak. And Igor, if you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Witness and the experience of creating it, that would be great.
Hi, so glad that you guys invited me. My name is Igor Goliak. I'm a Russian, no, scratch that. I'm a Ukrainian Jewish immigrant, refugee, and we came in 90. And I went to high school here, and then I actually decided to study theater in Russia. I got my acting degree and then a directing degree, directing graduate degree at Russian Academy of Theater Arts. Then I came back, and in 2009, I believe, I started teaching acting, and then we started a theater company, Harlequin Players Theater. And we were mostly performing plays in Russian initially, with the company members, because most of them are Jewish refugees from the former Soviet Union. And just before the pandemic hit, we did a couple of plays in English. The Stone by Marius von Meinberg, which is a play about German identity, actually, and how they deal with the Holocaust and the World War II. A very fascinating story about the family and how guilt and how the Second World War continued to devastate the family as time progressed. And then we did another show called The Seagull, and both of those shows were nominated. Both shows were done in English, and we have the Elliot Norton Awards here in Boston, which are the local Tony Awards, and both were basically both of the shows were competing against each other for the best show in Boston. So one of those shows won. And we kind of swept the awards, but it happened on Zoom. And because the pandemic had started, and since the pandemic started, my partner, my wife, and I, Daria, we put a show together, a virtual production on Zoom called State versus Natasha. And this was a show about a Russian orphan pleading her case with a virtual audience as the jury. So they would vote on her innocence or guilt, and it would basically change the show. And she would write on our walls here in our living room, and it would come to animation and so forth. And we started inviting people, and then we took it on tour, and then the New York Times came, and we got the New York Times Critics Pick, and then it kind of went viral from that point. And then we did the next show called Chekhov OS, which is based on a cherry orchard, and people like Mikhail Baryshnikov and Jessica Hecht came to see the Natasha show, and they started being interested in what we do. And so Mikhail Baryshnikov played Anton Chekhov in Chekhov OS. And then we did Witness, which was, and the Chekhov OS also got a New York Times Critics Pick. And we toured it throughout the world. And then we did Witness, which is the show that you saw, which is the next kind of iteration in our experimentation with virtual theater and trying to figure out how that fits into the kind of world of theater and how relevant it is and so forth. Not only was it an experiment, next stage in experimentation with the technology, but it was also an experiment whether documentary theater is possible in the virtual, because I don't think it has been done before. So that's who I am.
So Igor, you just mentioned that documentary theater has not been done virtually. What is documentary theater as you conceive of it?
What is documentary theater? I wish I knew. I can tell you my perception of it. It's theater that is, it's a piece of theater that is inspired, and it uses inspired by documents or things that were verbatim said at some point in time and were recorded somehow. So, for example, journals, letters, telegrams, interviews, and so forth. So those are actually, that's the source material and the inspiration for the play. And so there's no playwright per se. We did have a playwright and myself. We put together the play in a way where these interviews came together, but we didn't make up any materials. It was all things that were told to us. And with the theme of anti-Semitism, this was what the interviews were based on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I know from the talkback that you did when I saw Witness, you talked about hours and hours of interviews that contributed to the show. Could you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we did more than 100 interviews of people that had fled anti-Semitism, and initially it was supposed to be just refugees of Jewish refugees throughout the world. We talked with people all over, in Germany, in Australia, in Israel, in America, in South America, and so we collected those interviews and the idea was to connect them to some of the journals and essays and interviews of passengers of the St. Louis. And that's what we did. We ultimately put together a composition combining those interviews. And once I was actually having lunch with one of I believe he attends your congregation, your synagogue, and he said something to the effect that Boston is very anti-Semitic, and he's lived here his whole life, and I was kind of shocked by that statement, and that kind of inspired me to get more interviews of people in the theater world, actually, Jewish artists, Jewish American artists, and take their perspective on how Jewish life is for them here in Boston. And I was surprised to learn that there's a ton of pain around the subject in the Boston theater scene. I think that was the discovery that I made, that there's a lot of artists, Jewish American artists, not even immigrants, that feel unseen, that feel that they can't speak about anti-Semitism. It's like they're allowed to speak about anti-Semitism only in a certain way, only that has to do with Holocaust or Nazism. Like, those are the accepted ways of speaking about anti-Semitism. But things that are happening today, that is sometimes perceived as privilege instead of anti-Semitism, and they're afraid to talk about it. And that was a huge discovery point and a huge kind of realization for me, something that I, as an immigrant, would never have thought existed in the United States to the extent that I learned it existed by doing the show.
Was that a source of disillusionment for you?
To say the least.
So you mentioned that you linked the interviews to the journals of the passengers on the St. Louis. So I'm curious, did you come across these journals and decide to use them, or did you go looking for them because you were interested in it?
So the initial idea was to do a play about displacement of Jewish people. So it actually started with the stabbing of a rabbi in Brighton here, and that was one of the things that kind of that we discussed as a company inside the theater, and decided that this could be this is something that's a pain point for us, and this is what inspires us in the theater, something that evokes emotion. And one of the company members jokingly said, "So where do we go next?" And that's a really awful thing to say for an immigrant. It's a really, really horrifying thing to say for an immigrant, because when an immigrant feels that, they feel it very, very acutely. We feel it very acutely because kind of leaving everything behind in one country, in one homeland, coming to another homeland, and then realizing that, or questioning whether that was the right decision, or whether you've arrived or not, is a huge question. And that was a pain point that started this kind of discovery process. And the thinking was, what's a way to express this displacement of people, a type of unwanted people going nowhere, escaping death. So what better way to express that than the St. Louis?
Wow.
So once we decided on that, we approached the U.S. Holocaust Museum in Washington, and they gave us access to an archive of materials and letters and journals and telegrams and recordings of passengers of the St. Louis. And so that was the source, that was part of the source material that we used for the play. The whole second act is strictly newspaper articles, telegrams, letters, and so forth, the audio act. And part of the first act is as well, where there is stories of Kristallnacht and how they left Kristallnacht. There were journals of actual passengers.
Wow.
And the fact that actual immigrants that have immigrated from the former Soviet Union, from a country that doesn't exist anymore, talking about these things and saying these lines that previous generation of refugees said, and now we say it today, is something that's an extra layer of narrative.
I can imagine. Which makes me wonder, have you gotten different reactions from Russian Jewish immigrant communities, from American Jewish communities in response to Witness?
Yes, I think that the Russian speaking would be more appropriate. Russian speaking Jewish community had a very strong reaction, and they felt this disillusionment, as you said, very acutely, and it was a very, very strong reaction. It was more here's the difference. It was more of a conversation rather than a play. It was more of a dialogue that we have to have, rather than, okay, let's do some entertainment and let's see a play. So for people that have escaped anti-Semitism and coming from the Soviet Union, and some of them escaped situations that were life and death situations, and now hearing this, what the local Jewish artists have to say, they know, I would say this, that they know how it can turn from a comment, what's the boiling point of a Jew, to burning books.
Mm-hmm.
They know how they know the path, and they know when it turns that way. And so for them, it's a very acute and very strong reaction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's not about, okay, let's talk about it and let's feel it out. It's, shit, what do we do?
They've lived it, yeah. I guess, when you were speaking before about how the company determined what it was going to do next, it feels almost like there's a more than a mission, there's a burden almost on the company to do something, as you said, not to just go see a play and create entertainment, but to do something that really communicates the experiences that you have been through as people who have immigrated as a result of that kind of discrimination and those kinds of experiences. And I think that the third act, for me, began to show that the level at which those people in the American Jewish community experience this is going down a road that begins to, it can't approach the other experiences, but it begins to indicate, as you said, what can happen, the slippery slope that you begin to go down when these things start to happen, unless you stop and unless you call them out and unless you say, what are we doing here?
Yeah, I Marcia, I think that's the most brilliant way of formulating what the theater needs to do. I think I'm going to change it on my site now. a theater company should not have a mission statement. It should have a burden statement. I think it's brilliant, because burden is a type of service that you're doing to the community. It's an honest and sincere burden that or service that you're of service to the community, not that you're in mission. I think that's a brilliant way of putting it. So now we have a burden statement, and it also changes every play. But yes, a lot of the things you said, I agree with everything you said. It's 2021 was, as I read in some of the reports, was the most anti-Semitic year in a decade in terms of acts against people that are Jewish, specifically Jewish, and that were meant to be against people of Jews. So, it's there. Some people say that it comes in and out throughout history, and we're kind of okay with it. Some people are not okay with it, like myself. I have a 3-year-old son and a 15-year-old daughter, or 17-year-old daughter. Sorry. So it's hard. It's not the play for me.
Right.
It's not the play. I actually don't make plays. I don't know what's the point, because you need to have a burden.
Igor, I wanted to ask you, in planning this evening, Terry and I were in conversation with Sarah, and Sarah sent me some suggested questions, and she included in there a statement that during last Saturday night's production, you included live tape from Colleyville. And I just wanted to ask you about that, and I believe Sarah has some of that tape. So Sarah, do you want to play that tape, and then we can ask a little bit about what the decision was, Igor, behind including that in the midst of the performance?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm so lucky. Welcome home.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, so this happened, this was on Saturday when this was happening, and we were in foyer with Sarah and turned on the news, and it was just a feed of the news. And in the other room, there was the MC, the main character who you saw right now. His name is Gene Raven. And he was rehearsing a monologue, and he was going over his lines. And there were lines that spoke exactly about what was happening on the TV. So I came up with a quick way to include during the third act, the main character goes into different rooms and meets different people, and kind of meshes in his head. And I thought that in one of the rooms he needs to find Colleyville, and because it was exactly about. It was exactly what the conversation was in that third act, is what do we do with this, and how, and whether, and his realization, main character's realization or disillusionment of the fact that he's still on the boat.
Wow. So one of our participants, Joel, is saying that the Colleyville inclusion was brilliant, and I'm wondering if there are people who were there that night, or I know somebody said she was there the next day.
We actually kept it.
How that changed the play for you to see that either real time or immediately afterwards. So feel free to unmute.
When I saw it on Sunday night, last Sunday night, and that was right, that was the news feed, because I saw the images before. I was like, whoa. I mean, I kind of know. I mean, I experienced a lot of anti-Semitism in Boston, including very recently. So it just helped to hit home. And also I was impressed that you guys included it so quickly, because I knew it was going to come up in the conversation, but I did not expect to see it there. And it was kind of good and bad, you know what I mean? I mean, it was good that it was covered, but it's kind of bad that it was covered. I mean, but it's reality, unfortunately.
It's right there in front of us, but needing to put it in front of us is challenging. Joel, did you want to say something about it?
Only that I only saw it now. I had seen the performance several weeks ago.
Oh, I see.
Seeing it now, boy, oh boy, that really punches the point in that we are all on that boat in some degree. Thank you.
So it's Terry.
Thank you.
And then we'll let Steve say something. But I don't want to go away from this conversation, but I do want to, it also begs the question as to how doing a play online, the whole technology piece of it and how you can, turn on a dime. So you can talk about that, but let's Steve make his comment first.
Yeah, Steve.
So we were seeing it Saturday night, the Saturday of Colleyville with friends. And as we were getting ready, of course, to see it, you couldn't help but think what had happened during the day. And we didn't find out till really later in the day. So that was eerie. And then when this came on live in front of us, in watching it, it was really frightening. As a matter of fact, the next day I went to services at Temple Emmanuel. The rabbis and clergy had asked people to gather the way they do sometimes after incidents. And not a lot more people, many more people came. But one of the things that West Garden Sports did was just ask people what they were feeling. It was just eerie and frightening for me as I was thinking back, about 12 hours ago the night before. So very powerful.
Anyone else want to say anything about Colleyville? I'm pinned, so I can't see everyone. So Terry, if you see somebody who wants to say something, please call on them.
One of the other things that I just one more thing that I want to say, because audiences join the Zoom feed in the bottom right corner as they get onto the website, they join, and then we can see their cameras, and then their cameras come up in the show. Just if you haven't seen it, that's what happens. And so during this third act, after the scene, there's a conversation around the Shabbat table that continues, and then there's a Yom HaShoah siren that sounds to commemorate the Holocaust, and all the characters on the show stand up, and to be in that space, as Stephen put it, it was very eerie and very frightening. Even on this side, like as we were watching this show happen, and I actually made the decision to put it in, it's like, what did I do? It was frightening. But then what was so unbearable to watch is that, as we see right now, a Zoom audience, we could see Zoom audience as well. And during the Yom HaShoah siren, there were two very elderly ladies on Zoom, and during the siren and right after Colleyville scene, they struggled to their feet. Really struggled to their feet to stand up for a show that's online. Wow. It's not even real. It's like watching TV and So that means that there is a real connection and a feeling of a dialogue happening, that it's not just just a movie or just a play. And just seeing their struggle and their decision and their decision that they've made, that they need to stand up.
Wow.
Spoke a lot.
So I want to get back to Terry's question, because I think that it's a really important one, about how using the virtual medium allows you to do things like put that film on. How does it support what you want to do? Does it get in your way in any way? Like how does it impact the message that you're trying to convey?
You know, I don't have a message. I only have questions. And by doing it virtually and having, and that Saturday we had Mishkan, Chicago. Previous Saturday or Sunday, we had Gesher Theater present us in Israel, and so forth and so on. Sarah set up a tour, like an international tour of the show. And so that means that these questions can be asked of people, not just in my very, very local community that could come to see my theater in Needham, Massachusetts, but to a community that's national and sometimes international. So I think these questions are so important that they need to be spoken of locally and not locally. So this is a venue where these questions can be asked and discussed and talked about, and we can, you know, try to figure out an answer for ourselves where we stand, and try to realize something maybe. But I definitely don't have you know, a statement of any sort, just a question, because I'm trying, you know, these questions that the main character is trying to figure out. These are the questions. These are my, actually, these were my questions in interviews of the people.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the questions that I'm trying to figure out. I don't have an answer to. If I had an answer, I wouldn't have staged the play. There's no need to stage a play if there's an answer. Otherwise, it's you're just yeah, you're just rooting for something. You know, it's propaganda, not a play. So I have a play, and that's my way of figuring it, of trying to figure it out and find the people that have the same questions and share that space.
So I'm curious, what's next for Harlequin?
So we did a show, as I said, during the pandemic, which was called Chekhov OS, Chekhov Operating System. It was inspired by the Cherry Orchard, where Mikhail Baryshnikov was Anton Chekhov. So we actually are looking to continue that experimentation. So we're going to do an off-Broadway run of the Cherry Orchard in New York, end of May, beginning of June. And it's going to be a hybrid production. There's going to be an in-person version, and there's going to be a virtual version. So all of you will be able to see this display if you're interested virtually. It's not going to be just a broadcast. It's going to be actually a new, a different perspective on the show, something that the in-person audience doesn't get to see. So it's the next iteration of experimenting with virtual theater and this production specifically. So that's what's going to be happening in end of May. So please come to New York or come online and see the show online.
Great. So I would at this point encourage people to put some questions in the chat, which I will be happy to share with Igor. One question is, what, if any, were the reactions of Holocaust survivors who have seen Witness? if you have spoken with any.
Sarah, did we have, I know we had some emails.
Yeah, I was just thinking about this. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah. I work with Igor. I know that we actually had one man come to the play who had been on the St. Louis. And he was actually like a survivor of the St. Louis, which was incredible. Wow. And we've had several people who had relatives who, and so one of the things that the talkbacks like this, but that happened after each show, a lot of people would put their stories into the chat and say, you know, my grandparents died in this, you know, pogrom, or died in the Holocaust, or died here, or, and they would share those kinds of stories, or they had relatives from the St. Louis. So there was a lot of kind of family ties through the story we were telling into the chat and into the conversation. I don't specifically remember specific comments about I'm a Holocaust survivor and I feel this way. I don't remember that, but definitely a lot of personal stories that were shared that were meaningful. Yeah.
Thanks, Sarah. So Terry's also asking, how do you think this play fights anti-Semitism? And I don't know if that's your word or Terry's word.
In terms of fighting anything, again, I don't know about fighting, and I know about questioning, and I know about making something visible that is invisible, something that people are afraid to talk about, and talk about at Shabbat tables with a close group of people or family, and to say those things out loud. I think that's important. I just, you know, as ignorant as I am, I just didn't know that that was a thing you guys did here in America. So, as the main character said, I thought it was different.
Wow.
So I can speak a little more about that. Last week when we had the talk back, because of this play Witness, we actually talked about, someone's talked about the personal experiences of anti-Semitism that we face in Boston, in Chicago, in St. Louis. And I don't think that conversation would have come up. It hasn't come up in other conversations, but because of Witness, and sometimes you repress it, right? Like I remember as a kid, it was always common and so forth. And, you know, as people are talking, I'm like, yeah, that happened to me. I remember that. And, you know, you think it was normal, but it's not normal. And it's coming back, right? And it's horrible that it's coming back. So this play opened up the conversation and the awareness, which I think is a good start, right?
I think so too. I think so too. There's something that that probably the most tragic line in that show for me. It's something that was told to me by the person that was, oh, I can't wear my kippah anymore because I'm perceived as this, or I can't because I was specifically told, or this artistic director did this, and this. And this person said, after listing like a ton of incidents, he was like, you know, and this is, in my opinion, this is the most tragic line in the play. Maybe it just doesn't exist. Maybe we just perceive it and it's all in our person. Maybe it just doesn't exist at all and we're just hallucinating. To have that kind of self-doubt, that's scary.
That does give you pause. There's a question from Steve about connecting with facing history in ourselves, so that young people might be interested in this medium, which would help them learn about the stories and the issues of anti-Semitism.
Stephen, that's a brilliant question. Sarah set up we did a show last Thursday that was presented by Cleveland Jewish organization.
Akiva for teens. Akiva for teens in Cleveland.
And you're absolutely right. You hit it right on the head. The chat was incredible because they're all chats, right? They're the teenagers and they're just chatting the whole time. And they were so engaged. They were so engaged with the tech part. And they were amazing audience. You couldn't drag the, speaking of a venue, you couldn't drag those people into the theater. And online, they were like chatting and making choices and like having fun with this technology. And through this technology, they were able to take in some of the material. Sarah, do you have anything to add? So that I was blown away by that reaction.
Yeah, I'll just say that was my favorite talk back. Well, first of all, every time they Igor, he pulls the audience onto the screen so you can see them inside the play, you see yourselves. And every time the kids came on, they were all like, woo! So they were waving, they were holding up Akiva stickers, they saw themselves. And then in the talk back, several teens spoke up and said that they saw themselves in the play in another way, which is that they felt like there was a girl who said, you named a bunch of things that I experience every day that I don't say out loud. Wow. And they, the leader of that group created a really beautiful study guide too, which was good for teens. It had backstories on the immigrants, things about theater. So we're hoping to do more with education, higher ed, and maybe museums around this piece because it is so engaging and so interactive, and that's the perfect age group for it.
That is the perfect age group. It's just that virtual theater is so new that they haven't actually they haven't discovered it yet. But absolutely, it's a perfect place for engagement with them. We did another show when we did Chekhov OS. We did a show for gamers. It was on a gamers festival of some sort. And it was like 100 chats per second. And because you would never have these gamers in the theater seeing Chekhov, like that's ridiculous, right? And they were talking to characters in chat, like, uncle, what are you doing? This is ridiculous. Because they're used to talking to each other on it, like there's a Twitch stream and they're used to talking to each other in the Twitch stream. And it was perfect. That's how that's how that play is supposed to be is supposed to be taken in. So yes, absolutely.
So conversely, have you had audiences of people my age where you feel like, oh my God, they're just not getting this, and we're working so hard and it's not coming across?
Yeah, but I don't think we had too much of a barrier for entry. I don't think we faced that problem. I mean, there's always people that don't like the play. And that's completely fine. But I don't think that was due to age. It was just due to the fact that they didn't like something about it, and which is completely fine. But I don't think, I mean, you could interact more or less with the material using all the technology, but you kind of still got the play itself, I think. And just some people didn't like the play, which is completely fine. Most people did like the play, so that's good.
Okay.
I think Fran has a question.
Oh, good. Thank you. I can't see all the people. Actually, maybe we could, Terry, can you unpin us and maybe we can go back to gallery and then I can see other people?
If you go to your top right-hand corner, and there's
I can do, you're right. I can do that. Yeah. I do that. Yep. All right. Thank you.
So it's more of a comment or two, Igor. I thought this was an absolutely stunning piece of theater, and I just wanted to make two specific comments. One, the sense of claustrophobia in the last act, I guess, that you feel you're on this ship, and where are you going to go, and what are you going to do? I can't remember another. I've seen so many movies and plays and read so much about the being stuck that way as Jews, and I thought that was just the most I don't know. it was the strongest sense I ever had of that. It was so I very much appreciated that. But what I think you did brilliantly, and I haven't seen it done so much either, is when anti-Semitism reaches a certain level, we're allowed to talk about the Holocaust. And so you set this on the Holocaust. So the UN can pass that resolution on the Holocaust being real. Thank you very much. That's as far as people want to go. And so you start in a kind of safe way on the ship. And then you end up talking, of course, about contemporary anti-Semitism. People are kind of sitting there thinking, oh yeah, this isn't so scary. I'm not so nervous. I'm not, I get this. I'm used to this kind of thing. And then you do that. And I think that crosses a boundary that just has never, I can't remember another time it's been done as well. And so I say that, and I say that I think it's important for Jewish audiences to see this, but I think it's really important for non-Jewish audiences to see this, because you start off thinking, I can manage this, I can handle this, I know about the Holocaust, oh my goodness. And so to the extent that you can get this into those audiences, I think that's incredibly important and could be useful that way.
Yeah. Fran, thank you so much. I think you put it brilliantly. That's exactly what I did. That was exactly the intention. Because the question is, how do you, there's so much already made about the Holocaust, right? So how do you penetrate that, that barrier? How do you actually pull them out of there? Okay, they're going to talk about the Holocaust, and we've seen brilliant movies, and we've seen. So how do you penetrate that turtle? What's it called? Shell, right? And so you have to find a way around that shell somehow. So that's yes, that was my intention. The other thing that I find really interesting and fascinating is that I don't know, is that the theme of anti-Semitism is tied to the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And it's also, and it's good and bad, because there's the way that Holocaust is, in my opinion, taught and perceived, is that there were these monsters that lived thousands of years ago in some European country, and those were the bad guys, and they truly were. But I think the point that's missed is that those were just people. And if those were just people, then that can repeat itself. There weren't monsters. They were just people that were burning other people. And so the perception of the Holocaust happening 1,000 years away, even though we know that, even though they know that it wasn't 1,000 years away back, but the understanding that it was just some bad guys. But it wasn't just some bad guys. It was people, and we are surrounded by people. I'm not saying we're surrounded by Nazis, but I'm saying that people, all people have good and bad sides in them somewhere, and it's very important to hear it, to hear when it is turning to something that's more dangerous than. So as long as we perceive that anti-Semitism equals Holocaust, and what some country in Europe did 1,000 years ago, some monsters, we don't actually understand anti-Semitism, and we don't actually understand hate, because it comes out of nowhere. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Irene, did you have another comment?
Yeah, I had two. One was, first of all, a few years ago, I saw Dear Evan Hansen, where the texting and the whole, everything was through a phone, texting and so forth. So that, I think, helped open up theater audiences to the concept of technology, because shortly thereafter, of all places, the Boston Lyric Opera was asking people to text your reactions, whereas before, if a phone rang, my God, everybody turned around and looked at you, right? And I was actually at a performance where they stopped and looked at the person whose phone went off, right? So they're changing towards technology. And the other thing is, and I don't know bandwidth, funding and all that, but when Fran mentioned that, I was thinking like Fontbonne Academy in Milton. Every year they sponsor an event that's talks about the Holocaust, but in a very light way, right? And they're by themselves. And Stonehill College has a fact that brings in somebody to talk about the Holocaust, as does BC, right, and resources. But I was thinking, like, it would be great to see a round two of not just the Jews being persecuted, but a lot of minorities have trouble. It's not just us Jews. And to bring that a universal message of empathy. And I don't know how that's done. I'm not into that, but just food for thought. And also, if you did want to do outreach, I would strongly recommend, I don't have a contact at Fontbonne, but somebody must. But through Fontbonne, you get through to the other schools and the Catholic Church, which, but they, for whatever reason, choose not to engage us Jews. I mean, I saw a brilliant play a few years ago and they were half sold out. And I said, well, why didn't you reach out to the synagogue down the street? Oh, we never thought to do that. So, just food for thought.
Thank you, Irene. Joel put a really nice way of thanking you, Igor, and to Harlequin for the work that you do, which leads me to a question as we begin to wrap up, which is, how can people support the work that you're doing? How can they get involved? How can they help you to continue to do this work?
I'm glad you asked. So what you do is go to my website. Let me put that in. Harlequin Play. Sarah, can you help? I can't.
She already did it. It's already there.
Harlequinplayers.com. So we actually, what we really want to do is, seriously speaking, we do want to figure out a way to bring it to young people. So we have this project that we're working on right now with Barishnikov, but to me, this is the meaningful project that I really want to continue to exist and continue to be in dialogue with. So the next stage for us, what we've identified with Sarah, and Sarah is, by the way, is the brilliant managing producer that put together this tour. So the next stage that we've identified is we really want to reach out to schools and colleges, and we want to present these and have kind of dedicated talkbacks with different schools and different colleges and universities. And Sarah has already magically set one up for us. We're doing a show for Middlebury College, I believe, in Vermont. Middlebury College, yeah. And so what would really help if you're interested in supporting is that it's just we need help with having somebody reach out to colleges and universities and talking and setting up meetings and talking about this production and so forth. So if there is a way for you to support that effort, just because there's only 3 of us in the whole company that work in the company, and there's just not enough time. So we need extra help in communicating this play to colleges and universities. Sarah, you'll do a better job at this than I am.
I thought that was awesome. Yeah, reach out to us. I just put my email in the chat. We'd love connections with universities and colleges. We'd love connections with Jewish organizations we don't know. You know, we love connections with funders who fund work for education through arts. That's actually what we need. So if you have thoughts or ideas, contact us. We'd love to talk with you and work together on it.
Well, there's a number of people here that have connections to specific universities who can reach out. So that would be very, very helpful.
Thank you.
And I would imagine not just to the university, but to alumni associations or Hillel groups or something like that. That would be a way to get similar, you know, front and center. So,
yeah.
Well, I just want to thank both Sarah and Igor just for being so responsive to us and to supporting the work that we're doing, and to wish you all the best. It really was it was important. It was meaningful, and we wish you. We're gonna keep watching, and we wish you all the best.
And I'm gonna jump in. Okay.
Please do.
All right. So I want to thank Marcy. Big thank you to Marcy and to Igor and to Sarah for coming tonight, because I think the conversation was, you know, each talk back is different, right? So what I heard after we saw the play and what I heard tonight and learned tonight was very different. So I welcome the fact that we could do this with the Emunah and Friends community. I want to tell you what's coming up with our continuing fight against anti-Semitism, and hope you'll join us. So this Sunday, Temple Emunah and Temple Emmanuel are partnering with Hadassah, is doing a couple of programs, and the one that's coming up this Sunday is called Learning from Lessons of Hate, Opportunities for Holocaust and Genocide Education in Our Schools. The information I know was sent out to many synagogues. You should have gotten, Emunah people should have gotten a standalone email about this yesterday, I think. If you have any questions, you can just Google me, Hadassah, Lessons from Hate. And then also on next Tuesday, February 1st, Robert Treston, the regional director of the ADL, Anti-Defamation League, their New England office, and Peggy Shukor, who's their deputy regional director, are coming, and they're going to be talking about our collective fight against anti-Semitism. And interesting enough, same thing as with this play, when we asked them to come and speak, Colleyville had not yet happened. So I think we're going to have a different conversation than we planned. And then our community has been reading Dara Horn's book, People Love Dead Jews, and Judy and Fran, who are on this call, are going to lead a book conversation, a book talk about it on February 15th. Do I have that right?
17th, maybe?
17th? Anyway,
something.
Everybody will get a copy of the recording, and with that, you'll get the right dates and the links and all that other stuff. So I'll try to send that out tomorrow or the next day, not next day, but in time, not on Shabbat. But you will get it in a timely fashion. And I want to thank everybody for making this evening happen, and keep joining us. All right. So stay safe. And and I forgot one other thing, very important. If we have an action item, the action item that came out from AJC today was, and from other organizations, is to write to your senator. I wrote to Markey to get the Senate to confirm Deborah Lipstat's position for the Biden administration. They are listening. Supposedly things are moving along, and I hope that they move faster, because that voice at that level is needed. So anyway, good night, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Good night. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcy.
Hello, I have a question.
Of course.
How can I did not see the play. Is there a link that I can have to see it?
So we don't have any more plans right now, but except there is one special performance for a college coming up. So if you email us, maybe we'll sneak you in, Fred.
How about the old one, the one that
too.
everybody saw?
The one that it's live. It's live is the thing. You have to watch it at a specific time. So
I'll send you the link, Fred.
I'm getting
it's not
great
recorded,
messages.
is it?
No.
No. Oh, I'm sorry. All right. Good night.
Fred, we're
Yeah.
going to get you to see it. I will write to you.
Could you please?
I'm going to find you.
Thank you.
I'll send you his email, Sarah.
Okay,
Please
thank
do.
you.
Okay, thank you. We love Fred.
Good night.
Okay, bye-bye. Good night.